right, my name is Maurice Jackson, and I'm here with another book. Uh, I'm here with another book that is suggested for Christians. I'm trying to get this lighting the right way in here. So, all right, we'll leave it like that. Um, this is another book, suggested books for Christians, and so I know I've done a little playlist of that, and so this is the next book. This is the Constellation Handbook. It's a logical guide to learning the 88 constellations. And so we focus on 12, maybe even 13 nowadays in our sky. But there are 88. And so when you look into mathematics, 88 is I don't want to say it's an important number, but it's a number that is worth studying in division. So do 88 divided by 12 or 40 or 40 plus 88 or little things like that. You can use 88 inside of the realm of numbers that you study in biblical numbers. And so it goes into a whole bunch of constellations. You have Cancer, you have Hydra, you have Orion, you have Vulpecula, the fox. You have the ship of heroes. You have Apus, the bird of paradise. You have the southern birds. You have the volan, the flying fish. You have the dolphin fish and the male water snake, the Dorados and Hydras. You have Cygnus, the swan. You have Sagittus, the arrow. And you have Cetus, the sea monster. And that's just a few of them. I'm not going to read off all of them, but you have a few of them. There's 88 of them. And I haven't read this book just yet, but when I just saw the Vulpes or the Vulpex thing, that kind of stood out to me as the fox. That was kind of crazy, and so I can see all these animals in I can see all these animals inside of the Holy Bible, like when Samson tied the foxes together. And so I guess that was just something that he saw, and he saw those signs and things like that. Just like Joseph asked Benjamin, "Has your father not taught you how to divine? Like, do you know what divination is? Do you know how to see what's coming? Do you know how not to see what's coming? Do you know how to conceal a matter? You know what I mean?" And so there's a portion of this book that I would like to read really quickly. It says Triangulum Austral Crux. And it says these two constellations are introduced before the Hotman and Kezer's voyage to the East Indies. Triangulum Austral represents the level tool which Crux, while Crux is the Southern Cross, often associated with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And I just so happened to flip and turn to that page just now. And so that reading is right here. If you want to pause it and read it, you could do that most assuredly. And so there's so many more in here, and so I feel like this is just a book that you could learn something from. I'm not gonna say it's mandatory for you to call yourself a Christian, but this is something that you could read and you could learn more about the Bible because you have a comparison. So the Holy Bible is the seed, it's the tree of life. And all of these books that I'm showing to you are just different branches that you can read. You can be like, oh, well, if this branch says this, then this branch must say that. And if that branch says this, then I should be able to find this in this tree. And this tree says this. And, you should be able to do that with these books. And so I won't keep you much longer. Again, the book is called Constellation Handbook. It is a reading on the 88 constellations. It's a logical guide to learning the 88 constellations. So I really appreciate your time. I love you and thank you. And peace be with you. All right. My name is Maurice Jackson. This is another Bible reading and interpretation. Thanks for joining me. This is from the second book of Kings, chapter 20. We're going to do verses 1 through 6. And it says, in those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos, came to him and said unto him, thus saith the Lord, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. And it came to pass, afore Isaiah was gone out into the middle court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Turn again, and tell Hezekiah the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee on the third day. Thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord. I will heal thee. On the third day thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord. And I will add unto thy days 15 years. And I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria. And I will defend this city for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake. So that was the second book of Kings, chapter 20, verse 1 through 6. Um, and so I wanted to point that out. God put that on my heart to read this one because all Isaiah said to him was, Set thine house in order, for thou shalt not die, and for thou shalt die and not live. It doesn't say that he told Hezekiah when he would die. So Hezekiah very well could have had 15 more years after he even said that. But because he turned to God after he said that, after Isaiah said that to him, Hezekiah turned to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. And after that, God came and gave him 15 more years. He gave him 15 more years. And it says, and the Lord, and I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city for mine own sake, and for my servant David's sake. So not only was he given 15 years, his kingdom was protected for that 15 years, for God's sake and for his servant David's sake, because that man um, was a good man, and he did pray to God when he felt he was about to die, when he was told he was about to die and not live. He turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord instead of crying and going running around telling everybody this and going to go have one last hurrah and get drunk and get or go eat all crazy and do all of this and be a king and have women and do this and do this and this. He considered like, oh man, I'm about to die. But it also a big point of that is he didn't know when he still didn't know when he was going to die. He just knew that he was going to die. And so he could have had another 5 years, but then God came and added 15 years. So that's another 20 years. It's very not likely that a person is told how long they have to live and that person lives that long. You might have cancer and somebody says you're gonna die in 3 months. And you might die in 3 months, but you don't know that for sure. This passage says to me that just pray to God through every circumstance. Pray to God through every circumstance. Don't be afraid to ask God for a little bit of help. Don't be afraid to ask God for a sign either, because God will give you signs that you never even knew you were asking for. I asked God for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding a few years ago, and I can't even say a few years ago, a few years ago, and He gave it to me, and it's still manifesting to this day. It's still every single day I learn more and more and more and more and more, and so I got something more than what I even knew that I was asking for, and so did Hezekiah. You know what I mean? So even if you're sick unto death, don't lose faith. Don't be unbelieving. Just be believing. Just that's the way you're supposed to do it. The word life is in the word belief. So stay believing. Just know that God got your back through whatever, because through your prayers, you and your kingdom will be saved and protected. You'll be saved. You'll be spared. You just might end up with 20 years. You just might end up with an extra few years. You know. So peace be with you. I love you and thank you again for joining me. If you want to get your Bibles, I should probably like start going a little bit slower so you know exactly where I am and you can read along with me. So if you would like that, just go ahead and put it in the comments or whatever. And I appreciate all of the views and everything. I really truly do. So peace be with you. You have a blessed day and I love you. All right. All right. Okay. My name is Maurice Jackson. This is another Bible reading and explanation, and we're going to do from the second book of Kings, chapter 1, verse 7 through 10. Verse 7 through 10. And it says, "And he said unto them, What manner of man was he which came up to meet you and told you these words? And they answered him, He was an hairy man, and girt with a girdle of leather about his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 with his 50. And he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of an hill, and he spake unto him, Thou man of God, the king hath said, Come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down from heaven, and there came down fire from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And that was the second book of Kings, chapter 7. And I did instead of 7 through 10, I did 7 through 12. Um, and so that was that. The interpretation of that book, or the interpretation of this verse, was that when you're a man of God and you talk to God every day, knowing that He's your Father, you can ask Him for things that other people don't ask Him for or could ask Him for. There's another part in the Holy Bible where there's one of Jesus Christ's disciples standing with Him, and he asked Jesus Christ, like, "Hey, do you want me to call fire from the heavens?" And so now that I'm reading this part, it makes sense that that man was asking Jesus, like, well, am I strong enough to handle this situation, or like, like, do you call me a man of God? Am I your child? You know what I mean? Um, and so I have to read that story a bit more, but on a spiritual level, he could have very well been on a secretive level. He could have been asking God that, because when you're a Christian, you're in a secret society. That's pretty much a secret society. You don't walk around telling everybody what you and God talked about. You walk around and you cover yourself up, and you keep your secrets to yourself. You keep your secretion to yourself. You don't wear things that make you sweat. You don't eat so much so you don't have to urine or defecate as much. You keep your semen to yourself. You know what I mean. You're in a secret society. You're in a secretion. But with Elijah calling down fire from heaven, I think that's what that was. That was like Elijah was so deep in conversation, because he was another one of the people that fasted for 40 days. Um, and so he was so deep in conversation with God, I believe, that he could very well have still been in conversation with God and just been talking like, hey, like, if I'm a man of God, then move these people for me. If you don't want me to talk to them, don't have me talk to them. And that sign just was fire, maybe from heaven, and it consumed the 50. It wasn't just fireballs just to scare them away. It was fire from heaven that came specifically to consume 50 different people, 50 people, 50 different people twice. So 100 people, so 100 people went into the proof that Elijah was a man of God, just to prove it to him. And God will prove it to you too if you just ask Him for a sign. So remember that. That's very, very powerful. That's very, very strong. And so that was from the second book of Kings, the first chapter, verses 7 through 12. All right. So thanks for joining me. I love you, and peace be with you.